All right, welcome in, everyone. Thursday night live stream here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We apologize for being about 10 minutes late here tonight, but we are ready to rock and roll here for the next couple hours as we take your phone calls at 860-325-3687. We've got a number of guests lined up, including the incomparable Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama. We will join him in just a few seconds. Want to let you know and remind you that we've got our newsletter available, of course, each and every Monday it goes out. It's the voice of college football, so you want to sign up for that. Just send your email address to MarkRogersTV at Gmail. Your email address to MarkRogersTV at Gmail. The audio is now been added to Spotify as of today, so if you go to Spotify, if that's your place to check out podcasts and music, then you can check out Mark Rogers TV on Spotify as well as Google Play, Podbean, iTunes, and Stitcher. Amazon is one of our partners, and if you do any of your shopping at Amazon, you can support Mark Rogers TV by using any of the links in the description sections under the videos. Just grab a link that's listed Amazon, and you don't have to buy the product. Just use that link to enter Amazon, and you're all set. Of course, this week we've got previews and predictions all over the place. Go to SG1 Sports, where we're partnering with them. I have posted Michigan, Wisconsin, Michigan State, Penn State, Oregon, and Washington, three of the big games this week. And, of course, I'll have my predictions out later, either tonight or in the morning right here at Mark Rogers TV. Steve Merrill joins me at 11:45 a.m. Eastern time right here with his take on the betting lines for Week 7. But without further ado, let's strike it up with Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama. Stephen, how you doing tonight?
Doing well, man. Excited about today. Excited about this week. Alabama getting some homecoming done as they will take on those Missouri Tigers.
Absolutely. So, unfortunately, with the scheduling being what it is in the SEC and the ACC, missing a lot of teams and not seeing them for 6 years, this is one that fortunately we get to see. And I only say that because the intriguing portion of this is Drew Lock and some playmakers against the Alabama defense. I don't think anyone is predicting a close game or a close shave for Alabama overall, but there could be some interesting aspects of seeing Drew Lock match up against this defense.
There is, and Nick Saban very intense this entire week of practice, not just him, but also the coaching staff. And one of the things that I have learned throughout my time covering this program is when Nick Saban takes full responsibility for anything that happens in a game, whether it's in a win or a loss or what have you, you can expect to see a very colorful Nick Saban towards his players, toward the staff, towards everybody in general. And this week was nothing different. I mean, getting on the players, getting on the guys on the staff, guys on the staff, ripping into players. It was a very kind of hostile, intense practice this week as, Alabama gave up 31 points to Arkansas despite the 65-31 win. Nick Saban very much so known for having this defense squeeze the very life out of you. But this matchup against Missouri, Drew Lock, a potential first-round quarterback, he's got some weapons, especially a tight end whose last name is very difficult to pronounce. But one thing I do know is the young man had 11 touchdown receptions a year ago on 29 receptions, so a big red zone target. But a big issue for Alabama this week, Mark, is it will be going without Trayvon Diggs, the junior cornerback, out for the season with a broken foot. Sustained the injury against Arkansas on last week. You couldn't quite tell at what point did he injure his foot or break his foot due to the camera angles were out of whack there for a moment. But according to Nick Saban, it is a broken foot for Trayvon Diggs. So that would put former junior college transfer Savion Smith at that left corner spot, while Patrick Surtain, the second man's right corner. So the loss of Diggs, pretty significant, but time for Savion Smith to really emerge here.
Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama joining us to break down the Tide and the Tigers. It's one of the few meetings we get to see Missouri taking on Alabama. If I remember correctly, I think this times out correctly, Mizzou and Texas A&M, of course A&M being in the West, always plays the Tide. but Mizzou played Alabama that same year. Yes, they played that same year when they first entered the league in 2012, correct? And then, of course, in the SEC championship game in 2014.
They played the same year in 2012, and then they played Alabama in two back-to-back SEC. Well, they played them in two SEC title games. Well, they played them in one.
They played
One
Auburn.
was 2014. Yeah, they played the one in 2014. The one in 2013 was Mizzou Auburn. So you're right about that.
Yeah, so they at that point, I was questioning Missouri's entrance into the SEC, having not exactly steamrolled the Big 12. They were generally a 7-5, 8-4 program. Yes, before people stop me, I understand they had some big seasons in there with Chase Daniel, but generally they were winning 7 and 8 games in the Big 12. They come to the SEC, and the first season was pretty ugly. The record may not reflect it, but when they played good teams in the SEC, they got steamrolled. And Gary Pinkel corrected that rather quickly. And then, of course, they ran into the Tide, and it wasn't much of a game, 42-13, something in that range in 2014. But, man, we're talking 2012 when they entered the SEC that they played in Columbia. Now we're at 2018, and they finally get back around to playing Alabama. So we're hearing a lot about Alabama's dominance and how good the offense is, how good the defense is. Maybe there's some question about the defense after playing Arkansas. I can't put a whole lot of stock in the points scored by the Hogs because of the nature of the game. We knew it was over sometime in the first quarter when Alabama stretched that thing out to 4 scores or so. So I have a difficult time in evaluating defensive play when the game's out of hand. But what are the thoughts around there about the Alabama defense when put up against the standards of the defense?
When put up against the standards, it's not the way that Nick Saban and his fan base would like for it to be. But and just being honest here, this is not the same type of defense, Mark, that had the likes of a Jonathan Allen, a Tim Williams, a Ryan Anderson, a Reuben Foster. Even in years past, when you talk Courtney Upshaw, Donta Hightower, C.J. Mosley, Reggie Ragland, it's not that type of defense. I kind of look at this year's group as a mixture between the 2010 group and the 2014 bend but don't break group. But I'm not saying that those two teams in that time period did not have talent. They did. But one of the bigger issues with those two certain teams, the 2010 Bama team and the 2014 group, was a lack of communication. Not many guys like to talk. And part of football is talking. You got to communicate. You're taking that guy. I'm taking this guy. If you're passing this guy off to me, let me know. Give me a signal. Do something. Don't just sit there and assume that I'm taking on this linebacker, well, not the linebacker, but this offensive lineman, or I'm taking on this receiver or this tight end, and you're not letting me know anything. So the biggest part with this year's defense, Mark, is getting down that communication. And it starts with the linebacking group with Mack Wilson and Dylan Moses. Mack Wilson came out on Twitter this week and took it upon himself that he knows this defense is not playing up to the Alabama standard, and he's willing to get some things done to correct that. Dylan Moses, in my opinion, more of the system fit inside linebacker. He will talk. He will relay the communication down. So I think from the Missouri game throughout the remainder of the season, the one thing Alabama defensively can improve on is talking through things, communicating, making sure it comes in from Nick Saban, defensive coordinator Tosh Lapoy. Everybody knows what they're doing. And if there are some checks, if there are some tweaks, if there are some changes, then people know what those changes are.
MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, bringing you the best in analysis of the game that we love, discussion and debate always. We got Stephen Smith of Touchdown Alabama on the line. You got to check him out, whether you go to touchdownalabama.net, the YouTube channel, the videos, the writing, it's all right there for you. And follow Stephen on Twitter as well. I will mention that if you look at Drew Block's statistics, both this season and last season, he's feasted on lower tier defenses. And that's not a knock on Drew Lock. That's pretty typical obviously, if you play at a large school and you've got a decent team, and then you play an FCS and a lower group of 5, you're typically going to win those games by 30, 40, 50 points. And therefore your quarterback and your other players who amass statistics offensively, your skill position players, are going to have big numbers, because big numbers equal big numbers on the scoreboard. And then when you face the better teams, it's going to come back down to the norm. And therefore there's going to be that difference in the splits. And people that know baseball in particular know about splits. So Drew Lock, though, his is pretty severe, and it's happened last year. It's happened this year. So I'll be interested to see if he has enough time to throw. You got to evaluate the play, not just not watch the game and then go back and look at the box score and say, oh, Drew Lock went 17 for 35 with 3 picks. He played awful. Well, he may be under siege, and his wide receivers may be clamped down. Which brings me to Richard Neal, Mississippi State fan on our live chat, asking if it's imperative that the Tide bring more pressure because of some of the issues in the secondary.
I wouldn't say it's imperative. I do say that you're gonna have to develop that pass rush, and especially against Missouri, where Craig Kumagowski, who's Alabama's defensive line coach, spent 15 years with the Tigers under Gary Pinkel. This is a guy in Kumagowski that helped develop and molded the likes of Michael Sam, Coney Ealy, Shane Ray, Marcus Golden, just a number of different guys that were 2- and 3-star players, and birthed those guys into being, high-round NFL draft picks. So this has also been a week where Kumagowski has demanded front, where Quinnen Williams, Raekwon Davis, Isaiah Buggs, even LaBryan Ray are concerned. I wouldn't say it's absolutely imperative you got to bring pressure here, but you got to collapse the pocket, frustrate Drew Lock some. More importantly, stop the run. Alabama's given 134 pushing this season, and that's kind of like an Alabama defense. The last 2 weeks, we're looking at Trey Regas, Raging Cajuns, and also Rakeem Boyd from Arkansas. Rakeem Boyd, a former member of Last Chance U there. Both of those guys put up 100 yards each on an Alabama defense that's pretty much known for stopping the run. So more so than pressuring the quarterback, you want to do that, but you got to make sure you're fitting these gaps this week, because Missouri's watching this tape and they're going, there's an insignificant back in Trey Regas putting up yards. Arkansas's backup running back, not Devwah Whaley, the backup, is putting in yards. And we got 2 guys in Demarie Crockett and Larry Roundtree III that can put up some yards. So if you are the Crimson Tide, you're more so focused in making sure this run defense has figured some things out first and foremost.
And that's a concern, because we haven't seen that in the past. What we've seen in the past is maybe an elusive quarterback like a Johnny Manziel, a Tim Tebow, who's a runner, not elusive, but a runner, be able to have some productivity against the Tide. We've seen that in the past in limited situations, but that kind of speaks to the manhood a little bit. When you get run on by the running backs coming out of the backfield, then there's a little bit of pride there when we talk about Alabama run defense being run on. But I want to see it when it really counts. That's going to really tell me something. If they're in a tussle with LSU or Auburn and they're being run on, then that's going to tell us that, okay, this is a legit concern, and we may not see that for several weeks, if we see it at all. It's also going to be interesting to see that an Alabama offense that I believe leads the nation in scoring, it's very close. It's inconsequential whether it's first, second, or third, but they're averaging like 58 points a game. Whether they will be able to, and they're averaging, as you well know, Stephen, this amount of points while letting the foot off the throttle in the second half. And when they're in a 60-minute football game, as they may be against Auburn and LSU, what they can do offensively when they have to keep the first teamers out there the entire time and keep that mindset of move the ball, score the ball.
Well, one thing we can't argue about here is Alabama's offense is accounting for 81.5% of those points. So as long as Tua Tagovailoa is out there on the field, this team is going to score in bunches, whether it's a one-play quick strike or a 8, 9, 10-play drive that eats up clock, they find a way to get the ball down the field. And even on special teams, it's always nice to have a man by the name of Jalen Waddle that can take a punt return back, and you may not even need for Tua to come on the field. So this offense is finding ways to score, is finding ways to keep you entertained. This defense got mold of we're going to make you fear us. And right now has not reached that mold yet. And I understand there's some young pieces on this defense, but not everybody on this defense is young. That's why it goes back to my first point. You have to be able to talk while you're on that field and get the communication in order. And that's from the players to even the coaches on the staff. Taj Lapoy, Pete Golding, secondary coach Carl Scott. This is the first time they're really, really into the complexity of a Nick Saban defense. I know Taj Lapoy has been here longer than the other two. Came in 2014 as a defensive recruiting intern before becoming an on-field coach. But even with Taj, first year, he's actually calling a defense on the West Coast with the California Golden Bears and the Washington Huskies. He was a defensive line coach. So even for him, this is new territory in breaking down the complexity of a Nick Saban defense. And now you have to run it with the militant in Nick Saban watching over your head here. So it's an interesting perspective when you dive into it. Offensively, this group is clicking on all cylinders. Defensively, time to see some adjustments being made, though.
We've got Stephen M. Smith on the line from Touchdown Alabama. Please join him right there. It's Alabama touchdownalabama.net. I'll get it straight. Touchdownalabama.net. I've said it a few times through the years. They also have a YouTube channel that you can check out as well. Stephen joins me on a regular basis and has for quite some time. I think it's been like 5-6 years that Stephen's joined me to talk the Tide, the SEC, and the nation. And with this particular team, Stephen, it's odd that they're almost in a separate class from the rest of college football. Maybe Ohio State gets thrown in there a little bit as a challenger. We'll see what Georgia has in Atlanta. And I don't want to discount LSU and Auburn because I'm the type that says, okay, even though what we've seen is Alabama dominance and that they'll make the championship game, I want to give out LSU in particular, since they haven't lost or just lost their first conference game, and we'll take on Alabama for the head-to-head for the division championship as long as they stay unscathed otherwise. But I try not to look ahead and say, this is automatic. But this has become the talk around Alabama on the national basis is this bad for college football? Are they too dominant? Is this become boring? Are those things talked about around the program? I know they don't come from Nick Saban, of course, or anybody involved with the inner circle, but are they brought up at news conferences on a regular basis? And do the reporters tread lightly there?
It's brought up sometimes in the news conferences, but I believe it's more so around the fan base. And a lot of the fans that came in to Alabama football upon Nick Saban coming in. Now, a lot of the diehard fans that have been around the Crimson Tide since the Paul Bear Bryant era, they look at this as history being made, and they are enjoying the dominance because they know at some point, every empire falls, every empire dies. And before this one does, they want to make sure to enjoy every waking moment of it. So they're taking this with much appreciation, as opposed to the people that came on or the fans that came on when Nick Saban came on. They're looking at this as we're too dominant. There's nobody competing with us. There's no parity. Who wants to challenge us? The games are over at halftime. Why should I come? Why should I cheer? But to me, I don't think it's bad for college football, because when you have a dominant team, you're going to have the group that wants to watch to see the dominance continue, and the group that wants to watch to see will anybody be able to end that. Like, for example, when Clemson and Dabo Swinney was coming up, everybody was saying, is this the team to challenge Bama? Is this the team to knock Bama off? And I remember after Deshaun Watson got the win in the second meeting between these two programs for a national championship, and the conversation was, well, hold on, Alabama's good, but maybe maybe Clemson can come in here and usurp some things and possibly supplant Alabama. And of course, the very next year, the college football playoff semifinal, the Sugar Bowl, that did not go as planned for Kelly Bryant and Dabo Swinney. So it's not brought up a lot in news conferences, but it is talked about among the fan base, where you have the diehards go, this is great. This is awesome. This is history. This is something that you really want to appreciate and value, versus the new-aged fans that go, can we get some better games here? This is way too easy.
Yeah, it's going to be really telling when they match up against LSU and Auburn, Mississippi State to a lesser extent, because those are the teams that are obviously the better teams in the division. We've already seen the Texas A&M game. We've seen Texas A&M, as we see TCU and Texas Tech. Should be a decent game in Dallas-Fort Worth kicking off right now. But, Texas A&M wasn't necessarily a game. It wasn't a rout. It was still a game through a half. Bama always had a fairly comfortable lead, but it was, in that 21-10 range, where it wasn't a complete annihilation by any stretch. And then Bama, strung it out there late, and there was a backdoor cover by Texas A&M, which I readily remember. But, that was the one game that they at least had to put out an effort for 60 minutes or close to it. And we'll see what LSU and Auburn have for them. And of course, they've got their own tough games preparing for Alabama here. So as you look at the rest of the SEC, any surprises for you? Of course, Kentucky's jumped out, and despite the loss at A&M in overtime, they certainly have acquitted themselves extremely well the last 4 weeks, beating 3 decent teams. And then again, just losing in overtime at Kyle Field. LSU, Auburn, anything else jump out to you thus far in the SEC?
Florida jumps out at me a little bit. I'm very impressed with what Dan Mullen has been able to do with the likes of Felipe Franks. He's playing with a bit more confidence. They're finding ways to get playmakers the ball in a variety of areas. And how about that Florida defense? Chauncey Gardner and that secondary, those guys are clamping down. They're playing physical. They're flowing to the football. Dan Mullen has infused some energy in Florida that has not been there since early on with Urban Meyer and Tim Tebow. I mean, seeing this man jump up and down, get the crowd pumped up at Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, you haven't seen this fan base on its feet in a feverish pitch in quite some time. So the way Dan Mullen has gotten Florida playing on both sides of the ball, Florida's been a pleasant surprise for me to watch.
All right, Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama joining us to talk Tide as Alabama takes on the Tigers of Missouri. I think it's not necessarily an intriguing matchup in regards to seeing who's going to win the game. But again, Drew Lock drawing raves from NFL scouts. I would love to see him at least have a fighting chance of being able to stand in the pocket some. Obviously get rushed at times and have to show us what he has in moving around in the pocket and being elusive and being able to throw quickly and do all those things, but have a fighting chance, enough time to see how he matches up against an Alabama defense this week as Missouri takes on Alabama. And then the Tide moves into its tougher portion of the schedule with Mississippi State, Auburn, and LSU on through November. Stephen, anything we've missed? I know somebody had mentioned on the chat room just giving us kind of a recap on recruiting. I don't know if you're necessarily prepared for that, but I've never found you to be unprepared for anything involving Alabama football. So if you've got anything on recruiting, whether it be some recent news or just giving us an overall assessment of the 2019 class, you can have at it.
2019 class is still strong. That there's actually about 7 to 8 players that will be in Tuscaloosa this weekend for homecoming, taking their visits. I think one of them is Noah Pole, I probably pronounced that last name wrong there, but there's about 7 to 8 guys that will be in Tuscaloosa this weekend for the homecoming game. One guy that the Crimson Tide is trying tirelessly to get a commitment from happens to be Clay Webb, the offensive lineman out of Oxford, Alabama. He's looked at as a 5-star, a natural center. One of the guys in this class with him that happens to be Pierce Quick from Hewitt-Trussville has been on his phone almost every night communicating with Clay Webb, because they know if Alabama gets Webb, you would have Pierce Quick, Amari Kite, Darian Dalcourt, Tanner Bowles out of Kentucky, and Clay Webb, which would give you a 5-star offensive line class. So as Webb is still trying to play the game of who can deliver me the best offer, or which school may be the most intriguing for me, provided my best interest at heart here, Alabama in a full-on battle in trying to land Clay Webb to Tuscaloosa. But aside from that, in recruiting just the 6 or 7 guys getting ready to come down with Tuscaloosa for the homecoming game. The interesting news is, Mark, is University of Alabama athletic director Greg Byrne has decided to reinstate a certain song that the students enjoy, which is Dixieland Delight, makes its return to Bryant-Denny Stadium this weekend. Now, the reason why this song was taken away in the first place was a couple of expletives being blurted out in the 2014 game against Auburn. That would be my senior year at the University of Alabama. I did not take part in the blurting of certain words, but I was in the midst of the crowd there. But that was the main reason as to why the song was revoked. And the last 2 years, it has not been played. It's been replaced by Mr. Brightside, to which a lot of students were not happy about. But going to social media, which is a great tool, by the way, if you want to get your point across. Curtain players currently got together and trying to get this petition to get this song Dixieland Delight back reinstated. And as of Wednesday, Greg Byrne, Nick Saban's wife, Miss Terry, Alabama running back Damian Harris, and I believe Alabama quarterback Tua Tagovailoa was in the mix as well. But all 4 guys were in the Malmore facility as it was announced that Dixieland Delight will return to Bryant-Denny on Saturday. The question will be, will they sing the song correctly this time around? That's the biggest question.
All right, Stephen, do you have any position on this yourself?
My position on this, man, is as much as I want to see this song make it all the way through, and I do, I got a strong feeling that somewhere in the fourth quarter, there may be that one group of students or that one group of fans that's going to rebel. It's going to get sad, and Dixieland Delight may go back into the tunnel. it may go back into the archives of being banned there. I hope I'm wrong. I hope people can prove me wrong. But we'll see this weekend. I will be monitoring, so we'll see this weekend.
He is the incomparable Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama, joining us for years and years and years here, one of the originals right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Please like, comment, subscribe here. Go to Touchdown Alabama on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe there. Check out the website as well, touchdownalabama.net. Stephen and the rest of the group doing a fine job covering Alabama sports, Alabama football, like no one else. Stephen, we appreciate you stopping by. It's always a good time. Even me throwing out recruiting. You're always prepared.
Preparation is key, man. I'm getting ready to see these young kids come in and have some fun on this homecoming visit.
Absolutely. All right, Stephen, you have yourself a great night, great weekend. Enjoy the football game.
No problem, Mark. Thank you.
All right. Again, Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama, as we take him out of the live chat. We've got a couple other guests lined up based on my current format, my new format. You never know who's going to show up, because what I'm doing here, and for those of you who know the deal here at Mark Rogers TV and what we've done in the past, is had some kind of a schedule. So-and-so at 8 o'clock, somebody at 8:30, somebody at 9, on down through the night. That's become just too much to manage, a big waste of time. So basically what we do now is we just strike up the live stream. And I will make certain contact with certain people, or they will make and reach out to me, and I'll say, hey, we got a live stream at 7 o'clock Eastern time, and jump on anytime between 7 and 9. And here's the link. And then I will send it out to my Twitter following, which includes most of my media guests, and also on email, which I did not do tonight. And I've explained to all my media guests, and I know that many of them are wondering, okay, Mark hasn't scheduled me for a number of weeks. Where'd he go? Why aren't we doing this anymore? Because it's difficult to communicate and get these points across. Basically, we're doing live streams, and you're welcome to jump on, but you need to just grab the link and come on at your convenience. All right. So that said, Jeff Sharon from the UCF podcast is supposed to come on tonight at some point. I believe that's after 8 o'clock. And again, that's Jeff Sharon. He was on the night of the big Urban Meyer decision. And so I had apologized to Jeff because he was kind of sandwiched in the midst of all of that. And nobody was caring too much about UCF on that particular night. And we needed to get the analysis on the Urban Meyer decision that particular night. So we've invited Jeff to come back, talk UCF football. And of course, they will appear to be set to be in the midst of this controversy over a group of 5 being undefeated as they stand right now. And they've got South Florida and Cincinnati, their final 2 games of the season. Those are the 2 other undefeated teams in the group of 5 out of the American Conference. Then we also have Randy Strauss lined up from MyBookie. Now, I know nothing about Randy, don't know anything about MyBookie. These people have reached out to me, said we want to come on the show. We weren't able to connect a couple times. They have the link. We'll see if they make it on, and we will just see what their outfit is all about. Speaking of which, those of you who are interested in the betting game, as we've got no score between Texas Tech and TCU right now, on Friday at 11:45 a.m. Eastern time, we've got Steve Merrill, of course, from Pro Sports Info. That's 11:45 a.m. Eastern time on Friday, Pro Sports Info. And we will deliver, of course, his take on the lines for Week 7. At SG1 Sports, I've got Penn State, Michigan State, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Oregon, Washington previews. So you may say, Mark, and maybe I don't need to go down this path, but I will temporarily. You may be saying, Mark, why are you sending your videos over to somebody else? Well, there's a whole lot of reasons there. So there are reasons, and yes, that's a tug of war in regards to interests and where my work and my time and my effort and my resources can be placed most effectively. He's got a larger platform. He needs somebody to produce quality college football content. He's reached out to me several times, and I believe we've got a bit of an agreement in line for me posting videos over there, which means I won't have Washington, Oregon, Michigan State, Penn State, Michigan, Wisconsin previews and predictions here. You'll have to go over to SG1 Sports and look them up there. And will that hurt my channel? Maybe, but I have to take other angles into consideration in trying to build this out. All right. I've been inspired by 288028 to cut a video on conference rankings. And if I can look up and find the statistics that I built after 3 weeks, I won't have to tweak them much to be able to do an update on my conference rankings. So what I did was, after 3 weeks, because that's typically the end of the non-conference games as everybody jumps into conference play, I added up the records non-conference for all the Power 5. I added up how they played against ranked teams, how they played against, although I think that's a questionable statistic. But anyway, how they played against each other, of course, and put it into context and ranked the conferences. Well, there haven't been a whole lot of games since then, but especially with the Notre Dame factor in them playing non-conference games each week, and then to a lesser extent, some of the other teams, BYU and others, I can update those numbers. And we do have a sprinkling of non-conference games not involving Notre Dame, a little bit more at this point in college football than we used to. So especially once we hit that final weekend with the ACC playing the SEC in those 4 rivalry games, then we'll have more data then, and I'll release my conference rankings at the end of the regular season. Then, of course, bowl play will really tell a story, because that's when the games mean something. And what I mean from that, not in terms of meaning more than regular season games, I mean in terms of comparing the conferences, because when Ohio State plays TCU in a regular season game, TCU may turn out to be the 5th best team in the Big 12, and Ohio State may turn out to be the best team in the Big 10. So we can only gather so much evaluation from that. Whereas once we get to postseason play, you're basically always playing like-seeded teams from the other Power 5 conferences. So 28 AD 28 has inspired me to cut a video, even though I probably shouldn't add to my plate. The to-do list is like 47 items long. But conference rankings, also what I really wanted to do, and I dove into this during the live stream, I believe, last night, is just to give some thought to, I know when that first college football playoff selection committee rankings come out, October 20th, I believe is the date, we are all going to overreact, or many of us, to why are they 7 and not 5? And they shouldn't be at 12. They should be at 9. And why are they 3 and not 4? And why are they 4 and not 5, especially because outside that top 4, there's going to be all sorts of uproar and rage. But it's interesting to see through history, through this brief window of history, 2014 through 17, 4 seasons, looking at week 6, which we have just completed, week 6. We're looking at week 7 now. How far off the ultimate Final Four in the college football playoff and where they stood during week 6. In 2015, Oklahoma was all the way down at number 19 in week 6, and they made the college football playoff. And there's a ton of examples. And then also looking at the 4 top teams in week 6 in the AP and coaches poll, and then seeing where they finally landed. And so that's very interesting to see that as well. And so, for example, we had, as we looked at it last night, Utah was number 4 in the nation in the AP and coaches poll this week back in 2015. And of course, they weren't anywhere close to a college football playoff. All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the game we love as we look toward week 7. I believe we've got Randy Strauss on the line from MyBookie. Randy, how you doing tonight?
Pretty good. About yourself?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you jumping on the line. Hopefully that didn't cause too much pain.
No, it's just a Thursdays are always crazy. We put a whole bunch of NBA props up today. We did some political props with Kanye West and his crazy stuff today. Did some wrestling stuff. So for a Thursday, it's normally football. It's been a lot of hectic on sports all around.
So I got to ask you here, in terms of the Kanye West thing, it's funny because I had one of my friends text me about that because I'm a big Elvis fan. So he was comparing the Kanye West trip to see Trump to Elvis and Nixon, and asking me to compare and contrast. And I didn't even know that Kanye showed up at the White House and what that was all about. But I don't think they'll be making 2 movies about it. But yeah, what kind of bets can be placed on that?
Kanye West is 30-1 to be the next UN ambassador to replace what's her name? we put his odds up on that, and we're probably going to do some additional Kanye West props as much as he's going to be in the media with Donald Trump. So right now that's what we have, but we're looking to add more stuff just because that's what the main thing and people want to hear.
Yeah, even if you think it's ridiculous, you got to play to the crowd, and so that's part of the deal.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So whatever the public wants, we're going to try to give it to them. Absolutely.
David Strauss on the line from MyBookie. So let me know let us know what the platform is all about and what we'll find there.
Well, right now, we still have our 100% sign-up bonus over at MyBookie. That means if you sign up an account today, let's say you just want to try us out, put $100 in your account, we're going to match that, put an additional $100 in there. Like I said, we just put up a whole bunch of NBA props. Where would Jimmy Butler be traded? Will he start the regular season with Minnesota? Timberwolves put up a whole bunch of LeBron James accounts today. So it's just a fun time to open up. We'll go to mybookie.ag. We have not just everything people think that it's just all about football right now, but you have the baseball playoffs starting up. The Final Four teams are in there. You got USA playing Colombia right now in soccer. Is USA friendly. We have a great ESPN boxing match that we'll have some prop bets. Crawford versus Benavidez tomorrow night, Saturday at Nebraska. So MyBookie, not only we do football, we do pretty much everything else.
So again, you mentioned prop betting. People can join and just do the standard betting against the spread or the money line as well, just the standard games, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Well, we have side total, money line, first half, halftime, all that stuff. But it seems like now that sports betting is becoming so more mainstream, everyone wants more. It's not like they just want, okay, who's going to win, who's going to lose? Oh, can we bet the over? Can we bet the under? They just want more.
Hey, David, in regards to the lines for the particular games, we're coming up on week 7, and where do you draw the lines from? Because what I'll do is I'll just do a Google search, and there's a particular site that has all the major Vegas lines, and of course, there's a variance, half point here, point there. Where do you go for your lines? How is that determined?
Well, we determine our lines on where our money comes in. So if we're specifically heavy, for instance, we got tons of action on the Eagles late, and so we're probably the only book that has the Eagles right now at -2.5, where most Vegas has either 2 or 1. So we'll set our numbers pretty much like everyone else, but we'll adjust our numbers into what we think what our bettors are going to bet.
Okay. So because of the recent national laws that have taken place in regards to turning this over to the individual states to make their own decisions, and because of the money involved, and because of states wanting to draw in that money and draw folks to their particular location, we would expect within the next few years, some states are obviously more aggressive than others, but it's going to be nationwide here at some point. How does that affect your business? Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, it's a good thing for us because we're a lot of books like us at MyBookie. We're waiting for the states to legalize betting on your phone, betting through the website. Because right now, these states you have to go into their casinos or race books and bet sports. You can't go online. Some books have it, like DraftKings up in New Jersey, but you have to be inside that perimeter. You can't just be betting at home like most books are. So we're just waiting for the laws to expand that, where you can bet online, you can bet through your phone, where you don't have to actually sit like in Biloxi, Mississippi. Yeah, you can bet a sports game on your phone, but you actually have to be in a casino. You can be at the pool area, but once you leave that casino area, you won't be able to make a bet. So that's what most of the offshore books like us at MyBookie, we're waiting for those states to flip that switch where you can bet online, bet through your phone, and that's where we'll capitalize. But one thing that did happen, and not that many people are talking about, in New Mexico, which was probably 2 to 3 years behind getting sports betting, just legalized one of their Indian casinos that you can bet sports in there. And that's huge for states like Florida, California, heavy bet Indian casino places to get in there right now. That took a big, huge step for states like that. So not that many people are talking about that, but I think they should be talking about.
Got David Strauss on the line from MyBookie. It's mybookie.ag. You can check it out right there, and I believe he will match. They will match up to $100, correct?
Well, we'll match up to 1,000, but you can open up the account for $100. Match is up to $1,000 on the 100% sign-up bonus.
All right, very interesting, very interesting. So, anything else going on in the betting game concerning college football specifically? Any lines that took any fairly drastic moves throughout the week, or maybe a little peculiar to you?
Well, it's funny how when people always ask me about college football, and let's be honest, we're all playing for second place when it comes to just Alabama just suiting up and going onto the football field. But we put up some interesting betting props today. Will Notre Dame stay undefeated for the regular season? Yes, plus 150, no, minus $2. Will Nick Saban call out a student body again during this year? You can bet yes, plus $2, no. I think the best one that we're getting a lot of good action, where Kelly Bryant will play next, the quarterback that left Clemson. Penn State 2-1, Florida State 3-1. The field is minus $2, which we heard today that he's visiting Arkansas and North Carolina this week, in which, of course, we had many of those schools on our list. So, but the field right now, you can probably get both of those schools on there. So for college football, we're trying to keep the bettors more intrigued because, like I said, I think everyone just realized once Alabama suits up, everyone else is playing for second place. I think that's why we put a lot of these stuff on. But some really good matchups this week. Interesting game you want to keep an eye on. Washington and Oregon is at 3:30 Eastern Standard Time on Saturday. I like Oregon plus the 3, and that means if Oregon wins, that means Pac-12 will be out the Final Four playoff scenario again. So I like chaos. So give me the Ducks at home getting the +3.
Okay, so the Pac-12 is going to be out. So I find this interesting because if we're going to be logical, you're right. Because Colorado is not going to be able to sustain this. But technically speaking, they're undefeated.
Yes.
They are undefeated. If they go undefeated, they're going to be undefeated. Even if they lose one game, I just don't understand I understand the thought process that we know Colorado has yet to play anyone. They've got USC and Washington the next 2 weeks. Nobody's expecting this. I don't expect it. But this is one of the things that drives me crazy about college football is kind of the predestination aspect of our thoughts about, if the Cincinnati Bengals, let's say, were projected to be a bad team and they shoot out at 5-0, nobody questions that. And I know that the schedule has much to do with that, and I get that. But in regards to reality, Colorado will be playing for a college football playoff berth to a certain extent, starting or continuing this week against USC. Now, it's probably going to come to an end. I get it, but it's just funny how the focus has been elsewhere because of preseason outlooks. Basically, we almost determine the season to a large extent based on the outlooks. So I'm
going to rebuttal. It's so funny that you added Colorado because we were going to put them on a list where they go undefeated, and other odds makers, and we go back and forth when we do our numbers, they laughed at me when I wanted to put up Colorado. So it's funny how you mentioned that team as Colorado because they're still undefeated. No one really realizes because we put up Central Florida where they stay undefeated. People realize Central Florida was undefeated last year, and I always called them a national championship since Central Florida from last year.
Yeah, and based on the schedule, Central Florida has a real shot at repeating that and doing it again this year. And most people would think Colorado does not, including me. But again, I would give them the opportunity to play the games and see if they can do it. We got David Strauss on the line from MyBookie. So going back to the Bama storyline. So is it really kind of a Bama against the world? I know that it is. That's been the perception. Is it kind of even money? Is that bet's out there as well, correct? Bama against the field?
Well, we had the Bama against the field, but once the games kicked off today, we shut down our football futures just because of TCU playing. Texas Tech was playing some mainstream football. But yeah, it's pretty much, I think they're minus, I want to say minus $2 for them to win it all. They were minus $4 just to make it to the Final Four when the college football season got kicked off. So it is Alabama versus the world, but they could still have something. They still might have to play Georgia in the SEC. I tell people Alabama's probably the only team that could probably lose the conference championship and still be safe playing in the Final Four. I don't think anybody else would be safe, and I'm even throwing Georgia in there if they lose. I don't think if Notre Dame continues to stay perfect, I don't think the committee will shut down Central Florida again and pull them out if they're still undefeated. So I think Alabama, in my eyes, would be the only team I think that would, if they lose the conference championship, will probably still be in the Final Four.
You think an undefeated Central Florida team would be selected over a Georgia team that lost the SEC title game by a field goal?
As much criticism they got last year, it would not shock me. It would not shock me. And I think the committee would want to show that, hey, they'll put them in there and then watch them get blown out by 25, and then they can committee and say, hey, told you.
Maybe. Boy, I'm not that much of a conspiracy guy, and I
love chaos.
I want everyone to get their shot, but under the current system, they just don't have the schedule to match up. And I was a full supporter of Central Florida throwing the banner up in the parade and everything because they did all they were asked to do. But legitimately, the schedule is just pretty awful versus Georgia losing the SEC title game.
What do you feel about Notre Dame? Would you put them if they had a one loss?
Well, it all depends on what else is going on elsewhere. Yeah. So I would think my message to Notre Dame would be, yes, of course you have an opportunity to make the playoff, but since you are not playing a 13th game and playing for a conference championship, then you have to do more. We have to judge your resume to be decidedly better than, let's say, Clemson. If they win the ACC and are undefeated.
I agree. I agree on that.
You know, it'll be interesting to see if Notre Dame does lose a game and they sit there at 11-1, but Georgia's 11-1, or it would be 12-1 with a conference championship game loss, how those two would get weighted against each other.
That's why this Georgia LSU game this weekend is very crucial to the SEC if they can keep on with two teams in the Final Four. If LSU wins, that's going to be really hard for Georgia, because if Georgia loses the conference championship, that's 2 losses. So I was really hoping LSU Georgia played an evening game at Baton Rouge, not a 3:30 CBS game.
Yeah, well, I always root, David, for chaos. I want chaos because I want to expose the system for what it is. I think it's a ridiculous system where we're shoving 5 conferences plus other teams into 4 spots. So,
yeah. I mean, the committee was probably doing backflips when Boise State lost last week, that they can throw them out of the mix.
Yes. Well, they had lost to Oklahoma State as well. So,
yeah, true. I forgot about that loss. I always forget about that loss. They played Oklahoma State in the beginning of the season.
They did, yes. So I would love to see Colorado run the table and be undefeated. That would be exceptional.
It'd be shocking and exceptional, because who would have saw that coming?
I would also like to see Colorado lose 1 game but still win the Pac-12 championship, and then I will be on here raving like a maniac because no one will want them in the playoff, and I'll be saying, why are they being judged any differently than USC, who plays in the same division, or Washington or Oregon or Stanford or whomever who would be given an opportunity, most likely, depending on what else is going on in the other conferences. But just because we didn't think originally that Colorado was any good, they're being judged differently.
Yeah, and you have great chaos prevention right there, and I'll be on the air with you ramping if that happens.
But the undefeated Colorado team, that would be great to see.
I can't believe I just said undefeated Colorado Buffaloes team and more than once in this 10 minutes.
Well, yeah, we could have said that 25 or 30 years ago, and it was pretty legit. Obviously, they won a national title in 1990, but other than that, yeah, it's been a long, long time. David Strauss from MyBookie joining us. David, we appreciate you jumping on the line.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me on.
All right, very good. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, will stay on the line. We've got Jeff Sharon coming up from the UCF podcast. And he's supposed to join us in the 8 o'clock hour. We've got our call-in number as well. I'll put it in the live chat at 860-325-3687. That's 860-325-3687. I've given myself a little bit of work to do thanks to 288028 for tonight. So I've got the personal to-do list, which is pretty massive. I want to watch the NFL game, and I want to watch the Texas Tech TCU game. So how do I get all this done? Yeah, that's right. I stay up till 5 in the morning. That's how I get it done. That's right. We got the NFL game. We've got Texas Tech TCU, of course, which I did not make a prediction on. I apologize. I do select all the top 25 games, but I did not get to that. I don't know what I would have picked, but I will not count it on my record, of course, because I've not made a prediction. I know that TCU was in the touchdown to 7.5 point range. I looked at that game. I came across that game earlier in the day because I was thinking, okay, I'm going to strike up the live stream at 7. What are the games tonight? And I saw TCU and Texas Tech, and I thought, man, I want to see that game. And I thought, okay, what's the line on that game? 7.5. I went straight to the line, 7.5. I've done this for too long and looked at too many lines that I typically know what they're going to be. That doesn't make it any easier because I was like, well, TCU's at home, but did not make a prediction on that one. I will have my predictions out either late tonight or tomorrow for week 7. And I also want to shoot a video because we had a whole lot of fun with this. At least I did. I don't know if anybody else did. I had fun with it the other night, looking at each year since the college football playoff started and looking at this particular week, which would be week 6, games completed, to see who was the top 4 for that week and then where did they land. And then also looking at what ultimately turned out to be the final 4 for the college football playoff and where were they in week 6. And it's an interesting exercise because right now it's lined up pretty close to what people think it's going to be. Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Georgia, maybe Notre Dame, those collection of teams, and possibly a Washington or Oklahoma slipping in there somewhere, but those are the teams people are talking about. Michigan, possibly, but it's really isolated to Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State, Notre Dame, because they're undefeated and it played well. That the thought is, who else could come out of nowhere? But we've almost always had somebody come out of nowhere about halfway through the season. Obviously, not completely out of nowhere. They can't have 3 losses right now. But somebody who's in the 15 to 20 position has traditionally, over this short time frame of 2014 through 17, come out of nowhere to make it to the playoff. So we shall see. 860-325-3687. Again, I'm waiting on Jeff Sharon. He does a podcast for UCF, and that will be an interesting discussion because, of course, UCF continues to win and win and win. And they were not given their shot last year, and most likely they're going to be on the outside looking in again. The schedule is just weak. I believe we should have a system to afford UCF or South Florida or Cincinnati or whoever it is an opportunity, but we can't do that with 4 slots because they just don't play the schedule to justify the selection. I'm looking for a recruiting director because I got to say, I don't much care about recruiting. I love to see, once it's all said and done, the first week of February, okay, let's look at the names now, see how the teams fared, and let's look at the recruiting rankings and start to familiarize myself with these specific players. But the whole year grind of where's Jimmy Joe going to land? He's looking at 11 different schools, and he told us last month it was going to be Michigan. Now it's Michigan State. Now he's saying Notre Dame. I don't get into that. But I know that you guys do. And recruiting is huge. And anytime I release a recruiting video, which somebody mentioned the other night that I don't really get into recruiting. Actually, if you look at the off-season videos, I do a ton of recruiting. That the recruiting videos do extremely well. People love recruiting. So I would love to bring on a recruiting person who would just, bam, come on here and deliver quality recruiting analysis. And whether that person's locked in on any particular team, conference, or a national recruiting analyst, I would love to do that. So if you have any thoughts or ideas about that, of anyone out there, now I'm not talking about I'm going to be able to grab, I'm not thinking of anyone. I can't remember the guy from ESPN. His name escapes me. Anyway, Tom Luganville. Obviously, he's not going to be my recruiting director. He's got a slightly higher gig going right now. So nobody like that. But if you get suggestions of anyone that you know who is really into recruiting, that's all they have to be. They have to be completely locked into recruiting. And it doesn't have to be everyone. Let's say they're just locked into Florida recruiting or SEC recruiting, then that's good enough. And then we can bring them on here, and they can produce videos and get that information out. So they need to know recruiting, and they need to be able to communicate. That helps. All right. Who's in the live chat? 860-325-7. 860-325-3687. As we previously mentioned, 2880-28 kid Zoom play. I don't think my chat, for some reason, it doesn't go as far back as the beginning of the chat. It never does. It only goes back maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Emmanuel's on the line. As we mentioned, Zoom play, Navy Thomas, Dennis, mentioning that Miami's in the top 5 for 2019 recruiting. We have yet to ever hear anything negative about Miami football from Dennis. Not that that's a bad thing. He's an optimist. He's a positive guy about Miami football. Richard telling us that Bama's 34th nationally in total defense. I have an issue with the defensive rankings, though. I know that there's some relevance to that. It's somewhat telling us a story, but the total yards, there are advanced metrics which paint the story much better than that. Texas Tech on top of TCU 3-0. All right, Richard Neal on the line, USC Gamecock fan. Good to see you. Let's see if there are any names that I haven't seen in the past. Dabucci, we got him. We got Dennis, of course. Anybody else in the chat? Air Max, the Legend Killer. I haven't seen you for a while. Good to see you in the chat. I'm going to butcher this name if I ever try it, so I won't. Daibhidh, McCallum, or McCallum. Welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. And you dove right in, didn't you, with a number of comments there. So if you're still on the line, thanks for joining us. We started out the live stream tonight with Stephen M. Smith from Touchdown Alabama, talking Tide versus Missouri and all things Alabama football. So if you missed that, wait until the live stream processes and posts, and you can go back and watch the entire show. Anybody else on the line? Anybody else with anything for me? 860-325-3687. I will only hang on here because I'm expecting Jeff Sharon from UCF Podcast. Will Sky, welcome to Mark Rogers TV. Sean's on the line. And Mike Scott. Mike Scott, I don't know that I've seen your name or your handle. Mike, welcome to Mark Rogers TV. You guys know that you can join the newsletter by just simply signing up by sending your email address to mine. That's MarkRogersTV@gmail.com. And I'm guessing that some of you or somebody in your household does shopping through Amazon. You can help me out tremendously by just using the links in the comment section. So go down to the description section underneath any of the videos and grab that link and enter Amazon. You don't have to buy the product, just enter Amazon using the links. TCU's on the board with a touchdown. They're up 7-3. We've got Antonio Brooks. Good to hear from him. He called the show sometime last week. Bama boy. And I think I've caught everyone. George, of course. All right, folks, I'm going to hang on for a little while longer. It's 8:13. Unless you guys have anything for me, Jeff Sharon may have to come on another time. I sent him the link for 8 o'clock. 860-325-3687. Previews and predictions. I need to post the next one to SG1 Sports. And again, I know because of your feedback in the past, many of you might be wondering, why am I posting videos to SG1 Sports? It takes away from the content here. There's good reason for that. I don't know where NCIS Fanatic 21 is these days, but hopefully he's doing fine. But he's always wanting me to do channel updates and let everyone know what's going on. And I got to do that sometime, even if it's just to vent to myself on here. But we'll do a channel update, and I will try to gather all my thoughts and vision together at one time so I can do a live stream for anybody who wants to hear and talk about the channel. Of course, I'm not going to restrict you guys from talking about whatever you want in the chat room, but this will be designed strictly to talk about the channel and what I have planned and what I would like to do and why I'm doing what I'm doing or not doing. If I'm not doing something, it basically comes down to time, is all that is right there. All right, folks, I will let you know again that we're on Spotify. So if that's the place where you get your music, and even if you continue to watch the videos here, if there's any way that you can like it or comment there or follow me on Spotify, even if you never listen to those particular audio podcasts, which are the same as the video, it's just stripped off and provided there as audio. Please continue to support us any way you can support us. I'm on Instagram. Prior to starting the live stream tonight, I jumped on Instagram to shoot a quick video, and it was just awful. So I will do that in the future. I need to crank up my Instagram account because I'm never on there. All right, I think Navy Thomas has said goodbye. So that's our cue right there, I believe. Thanks so much for joining us. Again, later tonight, there will be conference rankings. There will be my look at the polls versus what turned out to be the college football playoffs. It'll be an interesting look at what transpired between week 6 and the rest of the season from 2014 through 2017. And then, of course, my predictions on week 7 of college football. So thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.